All right. Well, our speaker today, gosh, I don't even know how he came to Adam, but I've been hearing the buzz about Ivan. Ivan is this and that, and he's come to volunteer and he wants to do something and all that. It's so cool. So we finally get a chance to meet Ivan in person. And his topic today is truly the type of thing that the ancient teachings of the masters is all about. It talks about, or his talk today will talk about the Sophia and the Gnostic knowledge, truth. And this is a lot of the things that Christianity hid because it had to do with the divine feminine. So today I'm super happy to introduce our speaker, Ivan Escalante. And when I looked into his eyes, I saw a man that walked probably the same time that Jesus did on the earth, an old soul. So please give Ivan a nice big Adam.
Take some water first. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to say some things first before I begin. I'm relatively young. I don't know all the answers. It's a process of learning, and it can take a whole lifetime. All I've done is dedicate my time to, reading books. I've had experiences myself, and to try to make sense of it all, because it's like a big puzzle, and you have to just try to figure out and put the pieces together. And I want to try to summarize what I have figured out and concluded, and kind of the truth that it has led me to, which is essentially Gnosticism. And I want to talk about what is Gnosticism and a little bit of the history of it, because there's a lot of different information out there. It's extremely contradictory and even a lot of misinformation, mainly because of like the power structure of the world, especially the church. They've been fighting against the Gnostics ever since the church was founded, and you can say even before, because certain scholars, you can't really put a date on when the Gnostics came about, because some scholars say you can go back to like prehistory. Gnosticism is essentially a form of shamanism, and shamanism is like the oldest spiritual tradition or religion of the earth. It's like the innate human tradition. And when it comes to the history of Gnosticism, it does have a really prominent period throughout like 0 to 300 CE, because that's when, for example, like the Nag Hammadi texts were written, which are like the official Gnostic texts. And they were written around that time, but the knowledge has always existed before then. And it's always been an oral tradition. That's how most of these traditions have started. And the ultimate secret of the Gnostics is essentially the mother. And that it's not that God is female or God is only a mother, because God is mother and father, but God transcends gender. But in this world, the earth and the body, it all comes from a female. Like a female is the one that gives birth to everything. And the Gnostics also said that the soul is female and that the mind is female. For example, like the mind gives birth to ideas. Those are female qualities. And so throughout history, it's been even a struggle between the male and the female. Before the male patriarchal societies came about, it was based on the mother and the female. And this is where I have to talk about like war even, because it's not that war is only attributed to a male god or males, because females, there is like a darker side of females too. Like females are not just all perfect. You can't put the blame just on the males.
No.
And so it's ultimately just like about a balance of everything, and that's what the core essence of Gnosticism is it's even non-duality. And so there's this idea that Gnostics are extreme, they're dualistic, and they hate the body, they hate the earth. That is true to a certain extent, but that doesn't apply to the whole Gnostic phenomenon in general. Because what makes the Gnostics so extreme even is that they love the body and the earth. Like they love life. They didn't hate it. They didn't reject it in the sense that it was actually evil. There is a reality that within the body, there are like evil forces. And unchecked, it can lead to destruction. It can lead to, just negative things happening. And that's kind of the story of Gnosticism, is that they've always tried to explain what the body is, and even like where we come from and why we are the way we are and everything, including our desires, our passions, everything. And so when it comes to how to understand these things, you have to look at it from like a human perspective, in that you have to understand human nature. And that I have to bring up something too, that it's kind of a sensitive subject, but it requires a lot of explanation as well, in that you have like the gods, the angels, and the demons. They're not human. They're, above human. And they could even be like incorporeal, not having a body. But throughout history, it's like we've worshipped the angels, the gods, and have received knowledge and instruction from them, worshiping them. And the Gnostics, it's not that they were like against all that and said it's all evil, but that they just don't actually represent humanity. And so there is this idea that, okay, so I have to explain even like the cosmology of it all, because the story is like it starts from the beginning of creation and then the development of it all. Even with Christianity and like even Judaism, the Bible, they try to explain everything from the beginning till the middle and then the end. And the middle point even has to do with like Jesus and that time period of history. But it's just not that simple in that even that you can explain it, because it's not that we actually know like these things. There's the idea that like we just don't know everything, or that we just can't know, and that all of this is speculation. And a lot of people don't even take this stuff serious. But when it comes to how they got this knowledge, this is where like shamanism comes in, and even like plant medicines and like visionary experiences. You can do things to access the spirit world and actually gain somewhat accurate knowledge of these things. And so the texts in particular, and even all texts in general, these ancient texts come from knowledge that has been attained by these people from these experiences under the influence or under visionary states. And there is a narrative that has been put together, and you do have to kind of study it all to get a clear picture of it, or else it's kind of chaotic or it doesn't make sense. And to explain it simply is that ever since humans have been created, there's been like a struggle over the human mind, the human soul, and even the human body. And that's why I brought up the gods and the angels and demons. It's like they're all kind of trying to fight over who controls it or who can rule over it. And so there's this idea that there's the different gods are fighting over who's being worshipped or who has more power over humanity. And so that's where even like the Bible and the church and those religions come in, because they just try to claim that there's like one God, he has a name, he has these characteristics, and everything else is evil and idolatrous and stuff. And it's not that black and white. And especially even trying to demonize the mother and Sophia and try to say that she's, negative and give her all these bad names. But what it comes down to is that you just want to keep humanity ignorant of what everything is and just keep them locked on even like earthly affairs, so that we don't understand even like the purpose of life, why we're all here, and even understand our differences and how we're all unique, all the different races and ways of living and different spiritual traditions. And to like try to simplify it, in the best way that I can, is that till this day, there is a war for consciousness in the human mind and the human soul. And there are people who serve so-called like dark forces to keep that going. And it's through slavery, warfare, oppression, even censorship, everything. Like these are things that are happening till this day. And it's all very sensitive subjects. But the whole point is to try to understand it from even like a spiritual perspective, from the highest perspective, so that we can make sense of it all and even try to, like make the world a better place, try to understand each other. Because especially today, like everyone tries to, it's just all this disagreement, name calling, everyone says like, you don't know the truth, who are you to say you know anything? And it just keeps everyone divided. And these books that I have here, they're mainly like ancient texts from different traditions. And what it comes down to is that they all teach the same thing. And so this word Gnostic, it has to do with gnosis, which is a direct experience of knowledge. And that's what shamanism is. It's a direct experience, or just spirituality in general. It's a direct experience of the divine and what's sacred and what's spiritual, and it's available to us all. And so I do believe that there is like a truth, and that this truth can be known. And even I had to talk about also like aliens and extraterrestrials, because that's something that is relevant today. And it's kind of hard to try to explain it all, and I don't want to seem like I'm going all over the place, but it's a lot of information to try to take in. And again, it's not that I have all the answers, but there is a lot of information out there, and there are answers, and there are a lot of people who have come to, like really good conclusions and have done their best to figure it all out. And till this day, there's an ongoing suppression of this knowledge, even down to not being able to talk about certain things, not being able to criticize things. And it's happening everywhere, even like in universities and schools, and especially the church. Like I've grown up here in Anchorage almost my whole life, and the church has a strong grip over everyone's minds. And it's hard to find people or a group or anything to talk about these things and to even try to get together and do something about it. And so it's even been difficult for me to connect with people, because a lot of people are afraid, all the misinformation, all the slander and negativity that has been put towards these things, and even including like native traditions and knowledge, because that's what shamanism is too. It's just a native tradition of humanity. And so I brought up war because it's been happening all throughout history. There's like common themes throughout history, and one of them is war. And it's just constant fighting, one group thinking that they're better than the other. And what the Gnostics taught is that there are like these dark forces that are influencing humanity, and you can call them like false gods, but they are like kind of like gods, like they're higher beings. And whether they actually exist in like flesh and blood like that, I personally don't know. But when you look into like government research, the military, all the classified stuff, and just everything that has been hidden, including like the Vatican, what they know, there is something that can even indicate that it is real. And so, just to say like plainly, the Gnostics, they were extreme because they thought that we're at war against dark forces that exist even out in the universe, and it's even like that knowledge that the church has been wanting to suppress, because I say this even not with like reluctance, but it's just that like the church and these people that worship these dark forces, it's all being done intentionally, meaning it's like it is conspiratorial in that there's a group of people who are worshiping these forces to enslave humanity, and that's why the Gnostics are considered extreme, because that's their worldview. But it's not to say that this world is evil, that the universe is evil. In my opinion, and from what I've understood too from other scholars and everything, is that the Gnostics considered everything as sacred. Like life is sacred, the universe is sacred. It is created by God. There is such thing as a God and higher powers. But it's not that there's like one God doing it all. And it's even the idea that this God who has created everything is like outside of creation, and that he doesn't really intermingle with human affairs. And that's right there is the number one critique of a lot of things, like governments and churches. Like they try to say that they're doing things in the name of God, or that they are inspired and supported by God, while everyone else is evil or not chosen of God, and so they have the right to kill and enslave them. And that's just not how it works. And so in terms of the Gnostics, why even till this day it's suppressed is because it just challenges everything. It challenges everything that we know, we've been told and brought up, the way society is structured. And all I'm trying to do is make sense of it and explain it, and even try to share this knowledge with others. And that's why I have these books too, because it's not that I have come up with this or that it's my opinion. Like there are a lot of people out there who are doing this as well. And sadly, there's a lot of people who have even been killed or silenced because they try to reveal the truth, which is even the story of like Jesus. He was crucified because he tried to tell the truth even to his own people, if you want to say that he was Jewish and all that. Like he was trying to tell the Jewish people the truth of the Bible and history and everything that's going on. And he was against the priests and the government and all the corruption that's going on. And so I also just even like don't want to just focus on the negative, but you have to address the problem to see the solutions. And in the highest sense, the highest truth, that it does come down to love and light and respect and compassion, everything. But if it were that simple, then we wouldn't be in this situation. All this wouldn't be happening all throughout history for thousands of years. And so all I'm trying to say is that there is solutions, there are knowledge that can bring humanity together and just help us make sense of it all. And it is a process of learning. It's not just in one moment or even in one conversation it can all be explained. Like it's a gradual process, and I feel like something even does need to be done. And at this point, it's like it's hard to find any support, anything to really get the ball going. And so the topic of what I even wanted to talk about was about the mother and what she wants us to know. And everything that I just briefly summarized is what she wants us to know. there are texts in the Nag Hammadi where she speaks almost in the first person. There's terms for it. It's called a retology, where the god or the goddess or the Holy Spirit speaks. It's even in the Bible, like where you have God speaking. You can't say it's just a type of like literary form, because I do believe that humans are the ones writing these things, but you can be inspired, and it's a type of channeling. And so these texts are like authentic channelings of the Holy Spirit. And till this day, there are a lot of people who do channeling and even claim to channel the Holy Spirit or goddesses or gods. It's just an ongoing process. And so that's why I bring up the gods, the aliens, and everything. It's because till this day, everyone is saying that they're connected to some being and trying to present this information and present cosmic history, human history, from the point of view of some higher intelligence. And I'm not trying to say that it's all wrong, because I have studied the channel text, and even here at Adam, there's a whole section of channeling and extraterrestrial history and everything. And, you know, overall, it's like a positive message of love and light and everything. But that's why I bring up that they're not human, in that, in terms of how the angels and them were created, they're created, you could say, out of pure fire. And humans are created, you could say, even from fire and earth. But that pure fire nature is essentially just fiery. And all they talk about is how they're bursting with love and passion and desire even. And so that's the whole idea of angels and the gods coming down to earth, being tempted, sinning, and all that. So it's like, it's all a complex history, and it can only be understood once you break everything down to its original roots and how everything came to be and who created them and everything. And so that's where, like, Sophia and the mother, like, she's called the mother of the angels. She's the mother of the universe. There's a quote from the Nag Hammadi, specifically, it's called the Trimorphic Protanoia, and that's a text where the mother is talking, and she says that all the gods and the angels, they think that they created everything because they are ignorant, not knowing their root. And that in itself, even the Gnostics were somewhat hated, even by like the pagans of the ancient world, because they were saying that the gods were evil or that they were ignorant. And so they would say, like, well, who are you to say that, you know, the gods are ignorant? Obviously, humans are ignorant too. But the Gnostics, they claim to have direct knowledge and revelation from the mother. And so these are things like that the mother told them. And it's where even like Jesus comes in, and even Mary. Those are like the human forms of them. In reality, it's called the Logos. And the Logos is not a human, it's like a intelligence, it's like a power, and it's a force. And the Logos is male, and the female counterpart is female, or yeah, it's female, and so it's Sophia. And so it's called like the Sophia Logos. And that's what Jesus and Mary represent. It's like a dynamic, which is even connected to like Taoism and Yin and Yang. Another one is Shiva Shakti. And these are some of the texts that I have too, which are like the Sanskrit texts and the Shiva texts, they're called. And it's connected even to the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. All these texts, like, they talk about the same thing. And it's very simple. It's called duality, like male and female. And so the Gnostics, they kind of like simplified things, because what I'm trying to say too is that everything, all like the priesthoods, the people that worship the gods and all this stuff, like they try to make things more complex than what they are. And yes, there are a lot of like distinct knowledge. You split hairs about everything, but again, to try to make sense of it all is that you just break it down to what it all is. And so even with like Platonism, even Pythagoreanism, Gnosticism, even connected to like Sufism, Taoism, like all these traditions, they explain things very simply. and it comes down to even like numerology, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's very simple, and so that's what I've seen is like the answer to all this, is that it's the only difference that we see is obviously like the language, the culture. Everyone expresses themselves differently, and that's fine. That's normal. That's how it should be. But underneath it all, it's all the same, and it's all like archetypal. It's part of human nature, and it's even coming from one source. And that even natives and shamans all around the world, even here in Alaska, they did know about the one God. Everyone knows about the one God. It's not just unique to Christians, Jews, the church, Islam, or anything. It's existed since ancient times, and that's what I'm trying to explain about the knowledge of the Gnostics, is that all these things that certain people claim to be their own, like a type of monopoly, it's been known all throughout history. Obviously, too, it's been a gradual process of learning and growing, but it's all been there. And till this day, they're just not trying to explain it for what it is. It's like, because the topic too, the title is like, it's relevance today. So everything that's going on today, it's just nothing but division and chaos, and it's all intentional, and it all goes back to these dark forces, and it's like it's all for full circle, and that's why I think this Gnosticism stuff is relevant, is because they knew it in the past, and here we are today looking for the same answers, and they're there. We just have to come back to it and realize, it's all been there, and do away with all the misinformation and lies that have been put in all this, because it has been demonized in everything. And so, I don't know, at this point, that's just kind of how I wanted to summarize it. If anyone has questions, or if anyone wants to bring up anything, I would love to talk about it too, because I know you guys know about these things and can see it for yourself. Like, you just have to have a heart and have spiritual eyes to see, and it makes sense.
So where did you come from?
What do you mean? Like,
I mean, how did you start your path, and how did you decide? I mean, this is pretty incredible. Deep.
Well, I'm 31 years old, and my whole life, like, I've experienced things, even like negative things. I've seen, you can say, like, demons, ghosts, and everything. And so I've always been troubled by it, like, what is it? Even like, why am I being attacked? Why is this happening? And it took me a while to actually come into this knowledge. And it happened when I was 20. And it's even this book that I came across. His name is John Lash, and it's called Not in His Image. And he's the one that, he's a Gnostic scholar, and he's really cleared the way for understanding what it all means and what the original message is, because people today try to say, like, the Gnostics, again, are like body haters. They hate life, they hate everything, and that they're just negative and crazy and all that. And it's like, everyone's crazy, but it's not that black and white. They didn't hate the body or hate life. They actually, like, loved life, and that's why it's about fighting for truth and justice, because you have to care to even want to stand for these things. And so, like, I don't have a particular religion. I don't practice anything like that. I'm just like a normal person. I have a family, and I work. I just do normal things. But when I was looking into all this, I did get led to different directions too, and that's where even like the books here at Adam, they consist of different groups. Like, you have like the Theosophical Society, and then you have like a channeling, and then you just have like spiritual people who don't really claim to be anything, but they just teach these teachings. And to me, it's always like, not led to a dead end, but even too, like when you look into these societies and these people, it's not about like judging, but there's a whole darker side to it all too. Specifically, even like the Theosophical Society, it all like kind of broke apart when they were trying to teach about oneness and even try to change the world and stuff. That I actually have books by, his name is G.R.S. Mead. He was part of the society, but he ended up leaving it because he was turned off by the darkness and not so much like it's like pseudo spiritual, but they were getting into like channeling and almost like just not authentic spiritual knowledge. So he like broke away from all that and he just focused on like Platonism, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, which are like human traditions. And that's what it all comes down to, is that there is this human tradition that in a way like is more powerful than the gods and the angels. And that's another teaching of Nag Hammadi, is they call it like putting to shame all the wisdom of the gods, because they just want to lord over us, keep us enslaved, have us sacrificing to them and all that stuff. And all these spiritual traditions, that's where they get led to. And so that's why I bring up the aliens and everything, because other books too is like you have like John Dee, Aleister Crowley, all these people, like they're all these magicians and just like sorcerers and stuff, and it's all just it's all negative, and it's essentially like soul enslaving, and it's to keep you trapped on just like lower things instead of seeing the highest truth, which is even just simply like the Trinity, the Father, the Mother, and the Child. And that in itself too is a concept that's found in every tradition too, because it's even like Father Earth, or Father Sky, Mother Earth, and then the child is the sun. And so the sun is, you could say like the son of God, not a literal human being or anything like that. And it's not just one person or one group or anything, like it's all of humanity.
Have you read the Sophia Code?
I actually know about it. I've just started reading it because I even wanted to read it before I gave this talk. And honestly, like, I don't mean any disrespect, because the lady too, like, I respect who she is. But that's what I'm referring to, is like a type of false version of these things. Even though she does touch upon native traditions and all that. But when it comes to the angels and all of them, it's not that all angels are evil or anything, but it's a type of language, and it's a way of presenting it. Like it's really hard to explain it for what it is, but that's why these texts, like, they don't want anyone reading human text. Instead, it's all about the gods and the angels, and like, look what I'm connected to, and what I have to tell you. And yes, it's a bunch of love and light and all that, but it falls short of the actual truth of what's been going on. Have you read it?
I'm in the middle of reading it, so I was just curious about your take with all of this. I just thought it was interesting because I just started a friend of mine and I started like a book club situation where we're reading it together and then discussing it, and then you were talking about the Sophia, and I was like, very interesting, the way that all that connects together. So I was just curious about your take about it, because for me personally, the concept of the divine feminine is something that I've always, even before I was a spiritual person or knew really anything about anything, was something that I felt drawn to, and so I find your talk very, very interesting, for sure, in a good way. So I was just wondering about your take on it, and I would love a list of all the books that you have on your table right now. In my opinion, too. Yeah, take a picture of them all. But yeah, so
yeah, no, like I'm glad you brought that up, because that's why it's like, it's not that I'm having trouble speaking about it. It's just it's hard to talk about it because it's very sensitive in that. That's why the Gnostics, again, are considered crazy, is because it's like they're against everything. But it's not that they're against everything and that they say everything is false and only we know the truth or anything. It's not like that.
Right.
It's just that there's so much more to it, where this stuff actually comes from. Like even Sophia,
Right.
when I was, because I've only read like almost like the first half of it,
Yeah.
and she asked her like, "Are you Sophia, the wisdom goddess?" And she was like, "No, I'm just the mother of the universe."
Yeah.
To me, that makes no sense because Sophia literally means wisdom.
Yeah.
That's what the word means. So how can you throw out the wisdom goddess aspect and even what the Greeks knew and say, "No, I'm just the mother of the universe"?
Right.
These texts, like the Nag Hammadi specifically, she is the wisdom goddess. That's why she knows everything.
Right. Because both things can be true.
Exactly.
You know, exactly. She can be the wisdom goddess and mother of the universe.
That's
because
exactly
she's
it.
wisdom in
That's-
general. So no, I totally understand. That's why I was just curious about
Yeah.
your.
No,
take
that's
on
exactly
it.
it. And that's why I'm saying like about God's angels, all of them, like they try to confuse things. Like
Right.
they try to make it more complex than it is when it's so simple once you actually know these words because like, Sophia's Greek, like these texts are Greek, Sanskrit, there's Hebrew texts, even like Persian texts, like that's where studying language comes in is really important.
Right.
And it's not that the angels and them don't know, like supposedly they can speak a lot of these languages too, but the channeling it is mainly like in English, and they're not actually getting to the core root of these meanings or where this knowledge actually comes from.
What are your thoughts on the Urantia?
That's a good question because I have read the Urantia, and that's exactly even what I'm talking about too. Because in the Urantia book, they claim to be the rulers of the universe, the creators of humanity, the stewards of the earth. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's not that it's not true. It is true. They are called the rulers of the universe. There's a word in the Nag Hammadi called the Archons, and it just means ruler. But that doesn't make them the highest and the almighty and the best. And even too in the Urantia book, it's nothing but wars and conflicts. It's like the angels and them, they're like obsessed with war. And that's what cosmic history is. And even the Nag Hammadi talks about it, is that ever since creation there's been war. And so if they're supposedly holding divine, why have they been at war? Why is there all this conflict and fighting? And ultimately they just want to have rulership over the earth. And the more like darker aspect of it is to keep humans enslaved, which is essentially like feeding off soul energy and all that. And that's why like, throughout history till this day, like that's just what it's about. It's just keeping humans at a low level so that there's constant harvesting. It's like vampirism, a type of parasitism, and to keep us subservient, thinking that we're just worthless and they're just almighty. And so even with the Urantia book, like I have found value in reading these things because when I first started on this path, I actually was led towards the angels and the aliens and the channeling. Like I thought, it's like, well, this is the truth right here. And most people go down that path too. Very few get out of it, but those that do realize that it's not just again plain deception, but that's just not the real perspective of things.
And so I really got to take my hat off to your introspective thinking and your it's demonstrating as a human being for all of us here that it's an inside-out job. There's a ton of books out there. It's hard to get past the ego and know that there's no such thing as an original thought. Even in all those books, it's hard to bend the knee to the control that controls control, and that's where the angels are at, and they all have the same choice, okay? And we as human beings have the opportunity to have a choiceless expression of everything that's ever been. And in that choiceless expression we can see and experience that inside out job as a mirror to what we know to be true. And we know, and so I take my hat off to you to verbalize the fact that it's a healthy practice not to believe anything.
Yeah, like essentially question everything.
It's, even when you're reading all the books, am I believing this, or am I identifying with it, or is this my stairway to heaven?
Mhm.
And I think this earth is heaven.
I believe in the same thing.
You know, and that stairway is something that you practice every day from demonstrating what you just demonstrated as living life as an inside-out job.
Mhm.
And you got the connection with every atom in your body, and we all have that opportunity.
Sorry, I think they had their hand up first.
Me first? Okay. So, I commend you. You've done an amazing job of taking us through your journey. And I would offer the reason you probably had so much trouble is because they don't want us knowing the truth. And those of us that are taking that deep dive down the rabbit hole, there's a lot of crap that happens because they want to keep us down. And you said something that I just want to clarify a little bit. And you, I'm not sure on the archons, because you right after that you were talking about the parasitic and the, but the archons are demonic entanglements and attachments. They actually attach to our person with, you know, whatever matrix it is, whether it's I'm worthless, I'm lazy, I'm jealous, I have a lot of fear. All of those are the archons that these demons are using to keep humankind enslaved and trapped. All that stuff that you said, it was good how you said it, but
No, that's exactly
it sounded like you said archons were more something the angels know. They're very demonic. The archons is what's just about. It's amazing that humanity has survived all the archons that they have put on our persons.
No, that's exactly it. And even with this talk, like, I was having trouble, you know, all this time thinking, like, how am I going to talk about it? Because it's really dark and negative. And I didn't want to just sit here and just bring all that stuff up. But what you just said right now, it's like, that's exactly what it is. And so it's like, that's where even what are the archons, the gods and the angels, like, I even kind of personally believe that they're all in our head. There's like, we have a universe in our mind, and it's called even like the abyss of the universe and then the abyss of the mind. And even with Platonism, like this where Plato and Platonism comes in is really important because even the church was against them, is that they all refer to it as intellectual, that these are gods of the intellect. And so even these names, like, you know, the angels, Michael, all of them, like, they're just part of ourselves. They're not essentially something that's separate from us. And that's why I find interesting about the aliens and the channeling is that they claim to be their own independent existing beings that exist out there somewhere. When I don't want to say you can just throw that away and say that's not true, but because they exist within. But that's the whole point, is the duality of like as above, so below. They exist without and within. And so there are these like external forces that exist out there like that. And so like even with the word archon, it just means ruler. And
It's a matrix. The archons are a matrix that we're being held under, and they are real, and those things were created. Everything was created. They are beings, and those demons are powerful. I've battled some, and it's been hell. Let me tell you.
I have too.
You know what I'm talking about. We've taken.
And we also have choice, so choice is your battle because we get to disconnect from that in any way that we possibly can, because it's all there. If they are in existence, they're also in your mind. So being choice, having choice at 100%, to me, the soul's journey is a duality about choice. And we're constantly choosing one way or the other, or allowing different things for different ways of returning to the one. And maybe that's why we keep coming back again, with all different kinds of fun opportunities to choose in so many different good or light, bad or light, dark or light.
What else?
It's well known that the Vatican has about 25 miles of shelf space in their so-called secret archives that's really hard to get access to. Is it possible that the Vatican is a giant, is it possible that it's a giant misdirect to keep us locked in the third dimension?
Like the institution itself. Yeah, that's where, yes, I do agree with that, and I would say a lot of other things are too. And, you kind of brought up, Don, you kind of brought up like reincarnation, keep us coming back here. Like, why do we keep coming back here? That's not necessarily a bad thing, like it can
They
be.
want us for batteries. They put us in this recycle loop.
Yes, exactly.
Because we're batteries, we're loose, yes.
Yes, that's exactly it.
That's
And
why we keep coming back.
And it's I would even say too, it's like it's an external matrix, like society itself, the way it runs and operates. It's not that it's evil, like work, money, all this stuff, like it's normal, it's part of human nature. But what it's turned into and what it has been, there's a term called like Babylonian money magic. It goes back to ancient times where they created these systems to replace like what's natural, still keeping what's natural, but completely inverting it. And so everyone gets filled with all these desires for power and wealth and even prestige, like even joining certain institutions to gain access to certain things and all this stuff. Like it's all a very sensitive subject, and I don't mean to disrespect anyone or anything, but for what it is, like these things exist. They've created these things out there so that we get attracted to it, and even like these desires are seated in us, like, oh, I want that, or I want to do that, when that can be like archontic to keep us in a little, it's called like a term by Philip K. Dick, Black Iron Prison, to keep us just in a little box, thinking that we're thinking these thoughts, or it's what we actually want, when that's not actually how it is.
Wheel,
So how do we free ourselves?
get out of the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, that's the ultimate question. And I personally think that it just has to do with like a complete restructuring and revolution of society and everything. Church, government, military, school, medicine especially. Like medicine is super corrupt, and what it's become is literally a poison industry. That's not to say that, again, doctors are bad or it's all bad. Like, no, it's just, it needs to be dealt with accordingly, everything. And I don't have all the answers. Like, I'm not a specialist in anything like that, really. I have general knowledge of things, but I see how like, for example, like medicine, like let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. That's what medicine should be. Anything else, obviously, advancements in medicine today, like those are all good, and it's not about just keeping it very simple and basic. So again, it's like I think it's just a reformation of everything.
And so a lot of connection actually comes from your mind, because the mind's the invisible, the subconscious. And so when you look at medicine and illness, and you look at the root cause of what that is, and the disharmonies that it causes, it's your imbalance with your soul, your journey. And so, we treat it accordingly to whatever society, is our current way of treating it. But when you really truly look within, and your relationship with yourself and the divine, because that's really all there is you're a mirror of the divine. It's pretty fascinating.
I just want to interject a couple of things that have been coming in my mind. You were talking about it. I don't understand. We've had more bloodshed in the name of religion than any other reason. And the whole wars, they are creating the wars. Well, on the physical plane, it's to make money for the military-industrial complex. On the spiritual level, the war in heaven never ended. There was the battle of good and evil. Because everything was created with duality. You have to have the male and the female. Science tells us, everything we know tells us that. So by keeping us fighting, they're fighting for our souls, because human beings are the only being that was ever created that has a soul, and that's what they want. They want our soul.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, like battle against good and evil. Like the Gnostic says, like good is not good, evil is not evil.
It's experience.
But it's like that's why I criticize like the so-called good angels too, is because again, Nagamati, it says that they're both part of the same side. Like they're playing this game, and it's this game over humanity, human souls.
And I just read recently that Sophia has turned to the dark. Archangel Michael has turned to the dark. There's been so much force on the dark. that has been taking over the light, but now that's reversing. The golden age is here, and so it's going to change, and we get to be part of the change. We get to be part of it. And also I wanted to mention, I read too in the Council on the Scene, it talked about Mary Magdalene was a Gnostic, which I thought was very interesting. You know, the
Yeah.
Savior's wife was a Gnostic.
That there's the whole tradition that she taught Jesus
And the
all these
apostles.
things. And the apostles, she was the
She
head
was
apostle.
the apostle of the apostles.
Apostles and apostles,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So there's that sacred feminine.
Yeah, that's why it does come back to it. Like, it's not that it's better than the male, but
Well, you can't have one without the other. That's the beautiful part.
exactly.
You can't have, you have male and female, but it's the oneness. We have to come back to the one. One is all is love.
It's a balance.
Harmonic convergence.
Does anybody have any more comments or questions for Ivan? If not, he can stay afterwards and visit and share his books and any more
Well, you
comments?
have exposed all the angels now.
Ah.
I hope they're hearing
Yeah, no, it's
We're
a
all
lot. Like,
bozos on this train.
you.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Yeah, let's give him a hand.